Hey, this is Yuri and welcome to Blauparts. Today we're going to be demonstrating how you can change the transmission fluid and filter on a 2013 onward Ram 1500 with the 8-speed automatic transmission. This 8-speed transmission was manufactured by ZF and used in a variety of other Chrysler, Dodge, Ram, and Jeep models, so this demonstration would also apply to those. There are going to be some slight visual differences around the transmission pan area, depending on the exact model you're doing this service on, but the general steps and fluid leveling procedures will still apply to those models. For this demonstration, we're going to be using one of our Blau transmission fluid and filter change kits, which conveniently includes everything necessary for changing the transmission fluid and the transmission filter. We include the transmission pan, which has the incorporated filter and the incorporated pan gasket. Also, we have the necessary hardware and the appropriate amount of transmission fluid that's in accordance with the recommended ZF 8-speed automatic transmission fluid specifications. As well, we include a cost-effective fluid transfer pump for side filling the transmission. To learn more about the features and benefits of our Ram 8-speed transmission fluid and filter change kits, check out the link in the description below. Also, if you're interested in learning more about the recommended transmission fluid specifications, change capacities, and fluid change intervals for the Ram 1500 transmissions, we'll also leave a link in the description below for that. So let's get started.
Begin by confirming that the transmission temperature is below 86 degrees Fahrenheit. The transmission's temperature can be monitored using the digital instrument cluster by accessing the vehicle information system or using a diagnostic scan tool. If the temperature is above 86 degrees, allow the transmission to cool before starting your fluid change. If the temperature is above 86 degrees when starting, you will likely run out of time when later performing the remaining transmission fluid filling and leveling procedure steps by exceeding the 122 degree maximum fluid level temperature limit. We suggest all Ram 1500 transmission fluid changes be performed when the ambient temperature is below 90 degrees. All temperatures referenced in this how-to tutorial will refer to Fahrenheit temperature readings. To properly perform the Ram 1500 transmission fluid change, the vehicle will need to be elevated off the ground and in a level position. We recommend raising the vehicle using an SAE automotive lift. This is required in order to gain access to the bottom side of the transmission and perform the correct fluid filling and leveling procedure steps. To confirm you're lifting the vehicle correctly, you can reference your factory owner's manual for the proper vehicle lift point locations and safety procedures. Next, locate and loosen the transmission fluid fill plug. This is found on the passenger side right rear area of the transmission, just above the exhaust. Before draining the transmission fluid, loosen and remove the fill plug in a counterclockwise direction using an 8mm hex bit socket and ratchet. This will confirm that you will have a way to refill the transmission with fluid in case the fill plug is seized or can't be removed. Using a 10mm hex bit and wrench, loosen and remove the transmission pan drain plug in a counterclockwise direction. The drain plug is located on the rear backside area of the pan. The hex bit and wrench concept works well due to exhaust clearance issues. As you remove the drain plug, allow the fluid to drain into a suitable waste oil drain pan. Some Ram transmission pans may not include a drain plug, depending on the exact year. If this applies to your model, you can drain the fluid during some later procedures. Once the fluid is done draining, you can reinstall and hand tighten the drain plug, threading it in a clockwise direction. Using a rag, clean the excess fluid from the exhaust and drain plug area. This will minimize fluid dripping as you work under the transmission pan area. Next, using a T40 Torx bit socket and ratchet, evenly loosen all 13 transmission pan mounting bolts, working your way to the rear of the pan. If your model did not have a transmission fluid drain plug, as previously mentioned, you will need to allow the transmission fluid to slowly drain over the edge of the pan during this process. Confirm that the fluid is draining into a suitable waste oil drain pan. The rear 3 transmission pan bolts are best removed using a long 5 to 6 inch T40 Torx bit socket. This allows better tool angle and clearance around the transmission crossmember. Remove all transmission pan mounting hardware except 2 bolts, leaving one on each side of the pan hand tight, in order to support the pan until its removal. This particular model has a deeper transmission pan, and the rear side of the transmission will need to be elevated around 1 inch to allow for more clearance between the pan and exhaust. This will allow the pan to clear the valve body while it's being removed. Some models may have a shallow pan and not require the transmission to be elevated for the pan removal. You will need to confirm your pan type and proceed as needed. In our case, we're going to be elevating the rear of the transmission by first loosening and removing the 3 transmission mount nuts located on the bottom side of the crossmember. Using a 16mm socket, loosen and remove the 3 nuts in a counterclockwise direction. Next, using a certified underhoist support stand, begin elevating the transmission by lifting on the steel area of the transmission mount support bracket. Lift until 1 inch of clearance is seen between the transmission mount and crossmember. Next, loosen and remove the last 2 bolts holding the transmission pan in place. Tip the front side of the pan downward, allowing the filter to disengage from the valve body. Slide out and remove the pan, allowing the remaining fluid to drain into a suitable waste oil drain pan. Using a lint-free rag, clean the transmission pan gasket mounting surface from all oil residue, debris, and corrosion that could negatively affect a quality seal. Next, due to torque wrench clearance issues with the exhaust, confirm that the transmission drain plug is tightened to an 8 Nm torque specification before installation. Also, lubricate the new transmission filter O-ring with fresh transmission fluid. This will minimize O-ring damage during installation and ensure it seals correctly to the valve body. Begin installing the transmission pan and filter unit. First, confirm the transmission filter tube and valve body port are aligned. Apply a small amount of upward pressure to slide the filter tube up into the valve body. Once in place, align the rest of the transmission pan gasket mounting area and begin installing the new transmission pan mounting bolts. Next, using a T40 Torx bit socket, begin tightening the bolts in a clockwise direction. Evenly draw the pan up to the transmission using an alternate crisscross sequence while tightening the bolts to a snug, hand-tight feel. This will ensure that the transmission pan is evenly loaded, does not distort during installation, and the pan gasket gets evenly compressed to ensure a quality seal. Next, you can begin the final transmission pan tightening sequence. Using a T40 Torx bit socket and torque wrench, begin tightening the transmission pan bolts in a clockwise direction using an alternate crisscross sequence to the recommended 10 Nm torque specification. Next, if your model had the deeper transmission pan, you can now lower the transmission back down onto the crossmember and remove the underhoist support stand, placing it out of the work area. Next, reinstall the 3 transmission mount nuts, threading them in a clockwise direction. Using a 16mm socket and torque wrench, tighten the nuts. In our case, we ended up tightening them to a 30 foot-pound torque specification. Next, with the vehicle elevated and in a level position, begin filling the transmission with a fluid that meets the recommended Ram 8-speed automatic transmission fluid specification. Continue filling the transmission with fluid until it begins overflowing from the transmission fluid fill port. Once this is observed, you can reinstall the fill plug to a snug, hand-tight feel. With the vehicle still elevated and in a level position, start the engine and let it idle. This will allow the transmission to pump the new fluid you just added and distribute it throughout the transmission, resulting in a lower transmission fluid level in the pan. With the engine still idle, immediately remove the fill plug and again continue adding more transmission fluid through the fill port until a steady stream of fluid starts flowing out from the fill port. Once this is observed, you can reinstall the fill plug to a snug, hand-tight feel. At this point, the engine should still be idling with the vehicle elevated in a level position and the wheels must be off the ground. Next, Disable the traction control using the dashboard button. With the brake pedal applied, shift the transmission into reverse for 5 seconds. With the brake pedal still applied, shift the transmission to neutral momentarily, then shift to drive for 5 seconds. Next, release the brake pedal and lightly accelerate the engine, allowing the transmission to shift into second gear. Continue in second gear for 5 seconds. Release the accelerator pedal, gently apply the brake pedal so the wheels stop rotating. Then shift the transmission into neutral. With the transmission still in neutral, bring the engine up to 2000 RPM for 5 seconds. Then lower the RPM back down to idle. Gently apply the brake pedal and shift the transmission back into park. The shifting sequence you have just performed helps remove any air in the transmission fluid system. Next, prepare for the final steps in checking and confirming that the transmission fluid level is correct. Begin by monitoring the transmission temperature. Start by making sure the transmission temperature is in the correct range between 86 and 100 degrees. If the transmission temperature is over 100 degrees, we would advise you to shut off the engine and let the transmission cool down to below 100 degrees before proceeding. The lower temperature will allow you enough time to perform the next fluid leveling steps. Remember, the transmission temperature should not exceed 122 degrees at any time while you are performing the final transmission fluid leveling check. Exceeding 122 degrees will result in an incorrect transmission fluid level. With the engine idling, begin monitoring the transmission temperature. When the temperature is in the 86 to 100 degree temperature range, remove the fill plug and allow the excess fluid to drain. The transmission fluid level is correct when a steady stream of fluid flowing from the fill port transitions to a light trickling stream between 86 and 122 degrees. Once this is observed, the fluid level is correct, and you can now reinstall the fill plug, tightening it in a clockwise direction using an 8mm hex bit socket and torque wrench to the recommended 25 foot-pound torque specification. If no fluid was flowing out from the fill port when you remove the plug, you will need to pump more fluid into the transmission until you experience a light trickling stream coming out of the fill port between the 86 and 122 degree temperature window. Last, turn off the engine and allow the transmission and exhaust to cool. Once this is confirmed, use a rag to clean any excess fluid from around the transmission pan and fill plug areas to help confirm that you have no leaks.
So that is a quick overview on how to change the transmission fluid and filter on a Ram 8-speed automatic transmission. If you have any other questions or for more information on our convenient pre-assembled Blau transmission fluid and filter change kits, feel free to visit our website at blauparts.com. If you found this video helpful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and feel free to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.